Right, so I think we're live. So welcome everyone. I just wanted to sort of take the time today to interview one of our clients, and he's a financial advisor based in the UK, and we've helped him sort of generate 10,000 sort of pounds a month. Now, I'm Hitesh. I'm the owner of LTW Digital, and we build sort of lead generation systems for advisors across the world. So everything from sort of protection-based products to mortgages to wealth management, you name it, we've done. So without further ado, I want to introduce Tom Efron from CDC Advice. Tom, do you just want to give us an overview of what you do, mate?
Yeah, it's Tom Efron, as you say, from CDC Mortgage Advice. Started out in financial services back in 2005. Left the industry and then came back in 2015, 2016. And then obviously was hunting around for different lead sources and found you good self.
Great, and I think the aim today is to share your journey, but I'd love to know kind of what you're doing before we met. I know the biggest thing is you're kind of on the fence for 12 months, right? Before jumping in.
Yeah, I've always been trained, but it's always about a face-to-face and going out networking, and building referral current client bank, and that's how my lead gen has been worked from. I'd never really outsourced it or looked at any other reactions. Tried PAA back in the day, didn't really get much success and didn't really have a lot of belief from that point.
Yeah. Is it fair to say you had any reservations at digital marketing, or was it just completely unknown? That's one of the reasons as well for not jumping in.
I think it was more the uncertainty of it. With financial services, predominantly IT, internet, Facebook, those sorts of things, they don't seem to be a big priority for a lot of industry sort of leaders, as it were. And when you sit down to those as a business and you have a chat with them, they always say business off referrals and client bank. But with a limited client bank, it to build for that. So I was always looking for different options. I think for me, actually leaving the industry and becoming a sales and marketing manager elsewhere opened up the eyes to what we could potentially do with financial services. So it took those email marketing ideas into the financial services, but not being too technical.
No, that's interesting. I think so. It's fair to say you've accepted that deep down you've always needed to do it. And would you say it's a mixture of having the cost or the investment to do it as well? Has that been a factor? And I know we started working together just before the lockdown as well, didn't we? So
yeah,
I'm keen to know why now, really, more than anything, or why then.
Yeah, I think it's. I think when I was sales and marketing manager, had a budget to work with. That was obviously part of my controls within that role were to deal with budgets and make the maximum of them. I think when I had then gone back to self-employment, probably didn't earmark money towards a budget to work with. And I think for me, if I'm honest, I think the lockdown breaking point, it was either going to be take that step of jumping in or particularly look at just stepping out and coming out of the industry altogether. I think at that point during COVID, I'd major concerns with being able to go out and network. So knew I had to take a step, which I think we've been speaking for quite some time, and it just seems to be at that point.
And I guess to be fair as well, that we both agree. Well, I think you accepted that this was never going to be a quick fix either. So it wasn't going to be a case of we'll turn on a campaign against the results. I think you accepted that it's always going to be, there's always an element of risk to doing any sort of marketing, right? I think we both agree that we need to give it a good 3 months to get it going. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, and I think I'm quite fortunate. Obviously, like the bounce alone gave me a little bit to work on. Which, if you remember back at the time, I said, well, there's $2,000. I know I can pitch that at this, and it'll either make me or break me. And I think that was one of the decisions I made at the time.
Yeah.
I think going forward, I think after that 3 month point, I just know that working, so I've just continued from there.
Yeah, it's good, and I think it's I think the testing process that we kind of follow, which can take sort of 3 months to get right, is key. And I think especially in the first month where the lead volume and lead quality is always going to be over the place. And for those that kind of don't know the process that we follow, we kind of set out in the first month to find the winning audience, find the right hook, and sort of the right creative to get it working. In my experience, I think, especially financial services, there can be a lot of negativity and fear and scare tactics used. And I think we wanted to, I guess, create a campaign, Tom, that would provide a bit more of a positive engagement. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, predominantly, I try to give out a positive message as opposed to a negative one.
Yeah.
I try not to, it sounds daft, but even during this whole COVID situation that we've been in for the last 8 odd months, it's not been my main focus of the topic. My main focus is in people who are looking to buy, still invest in, and those are the people I want working with. So that message was about investing. It wasn't around the difficulties of COVID and how hard things were. It was about that force of you to carry on regardless.
And I think that's important because we all knew businesses and everyone's been impacted by COVID all over the place. And I think we wanted to, I guess we ended up for Landlords because we saw Landlords an opportunity to, we knew that they were going to make the most out of this bad situation. And they were probably the type of person that was going to be able to leverage it, right?
Yeah. And from my own background, which is, I've worked in a brokerage which was probably 85% buy-to-let as opposed to residential. So my own discussion that I was having with general clients was probably more geared towards, and I understood the market probably that much stronger. So I knew that I wanted to run with things.
Yeah, and I think as well, we knew that given sort of the mortgage spaces here, it sometimes very much can be a one-time sort of transaction with a client because they may move houses or whatever 3 or 4 times in their life, if that. But with a landlord, I think there was definitely a higher lifetime value and plenty of repeat business, which I think made it a lot more lucrative to run ads on Facebook too. So I think we both agree that Landlords was always going to be a niche, if you like, or an audience that was always going to be more profitable for you if we could get it right. Okay, so I think once we kind of picked the audience, I think the next thing was the hook was key, wasn't it? So essentially, we did brainstorm 3 or 4 different ways to grab attention. I guess, Tom, it was using your experience in terms of what landlords actually want, given the situation we're in. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think a lot of it did boil down to, and if we had word down to using the correct terminology for that individual group. There was, as you know, and even when we switched the campaign to that single image of the house, that changed the market. So it's surprising how small a little word of content or an image can be to the success and the downfall of the quality that comes in and the numbers that are coming in.
I think that's it. And I think really it's when we design campaigns, we believe that sort of the image is the first thing someone's going to see, then the headline, then the copy. If you've got an image or then a video as well, so we've also done video, of course, which actually speaks to your target audience and hooks them in, if you like, and really get them to take the next step. And I think at this stage, we got the hook quite right, and unfortunately we can't disclose the hook for various reasons, but through testing 3 or 4 different hooks, we found one that seemed to win. And just by keeping the ads fresh with new creatives, we've been able to keep that campaign running for a good sort of 4 or 5 months with sort of consistent results as well. So I guess what's your experience, Tom, in the sort of, I don't know if you want to go back to remember, the first 6 weeks, what was it like in terms of what you were going through, what you were thinking? Would you have good days, bad days? What were the conversations like with the leads? Just want to kind of pass that on.
I think it was definitely a testing ground. I think I probably approached the early leads maybe in the format. I did, I think, go in for the kill too early. And after, I think, week 2 and realised didn't seem to be grasping the clients. I just looked at my process, which is when I then switched to asking more questions and doing it more as if it was a standard situation. I think it's easy to get caught up in a Facebook chat or a message comes in and almost go straight for the kill and forget the basics of what we do. I think that was definitely a testing ground for me. So I think we did see a switch in the response and the returns after that point.
I think you're right. And I think if you think about kind of how advisors operate based on what I've seen and observed, a lot of the time inquiries have come through word of mouth referrals. So leads are always going to be a lot warmer. And I think there is a certain skill, if you like, required when dealing with social media leads in particular, is because you're catching them out cold. They don't know who you are. You haven't come highly recommended. So I guess building that rapport using digital channels, whether it's video, chat, or on the phone, is key. And I think going back to what you said, I think you ask the right questions to listen first, to find a solution, to take the next step. And I think the importance of this as well, because we were running a messenger campaign at the time during testing, is that you build that rapport first before they gave you their name, email, and phone number, which probably provided with a better ability in terms of quality and conversion. Would you say that's fair, Tom?
Yeah. Like I say, I think you definitely have to approach it as if you were into a new room or in a messenger room, as much as you would if you were going into their house as you stand on a face-to-face appointment. And I think to a degree, is the messengers when they come in, they say they're looking for a buy-to-let mortgage, or at that point, it's only information that they're looking for. And I think it's very easy to say, great, they're looking for a buy-to-let mortgage. How much is the house? What's the mortgage? How much is the rent? And go straight in for the kill, thinking that that's what they want, is an instant response, and it's not the case. They get a feel for as an advisor, they do want to ask other questions around it. I think that's what I definitely learned in those first few weeks, was asking questions about the big picture as opposed to that individual response to one image. And there have been clients that weren't ready to do anything at the time. Some of those, they just happened to see the advert and thought, oh, I'll click that. And I've kept in contact with those. I'm now later still dealing with some of the people who I very first spoke to. Because at the time, it wasn't the right time for them. It just happens to be the advert hit them.
And I think that's an important point, because I think what we found is really trying to qualify them as quickly as possible. But I think in this space, we could ask as much information as we can, but it can be out of context. But if we can get them on the phone and have a conversation with you, you're always going to have a better success rate. But then also it's a feedback loop for us to tweak the campaigns, right? And to say, do we need to go after landlords with more problems, which I don't think was the case in the end. Okay. I mean, how did you find it differed dealing with someone over the phone compared to face-to-face?
I think face-to-face is always going to be the big one. If you can get in front of someone, as I've explained to you, I'm very much in pictures as talking to clients, especially dealing with buy-to-lets. I draw houses of little people and I explain that scenario off of imagery. And it tends to be how I work. So all of a sudden doing that just on the phone, obviously takes some of your bag, as it were. And I don't believe, even to this point in time, I will ever have the same connection with someone that I just deal with over the phone to someone that I've actually had a face-to-face with. But I do sit there and think that so many people are used to the like Zoom now and Facebook, direct video calling. Those options that we've now got, I think, are really key moving forward. Because I have found that some of the clients, I've got a rapport with them, and some, as I've said, have heard other clients to me about the discussions I've had, but I've never met them face to face. But I know we'll get that stronger hook once I've got them face to face.
And I think that's it. I think if there's an acceptance of whenever you're dealing with someone with more wealth or there's more trust required, a number of conversations are going to have to be had. And I guess it's a mixture of using digital channels to do that as well, right? So, and it's about finding the sweet spot, because if you're going to go from face to face where you normally would build that rapport, build that trust instantly, it's not always possible through social media leads. And also I think with digital and Zoom and COVID and the lockdown, I think people are more accepting that video calling is the norm, and even over the phone. So I guess the one thing I've liked about your approach, Tom, is you've adapted to this and not just throwing your toys out the pram, so to speak, as well.
Yeah, I think I have to. I think it is any different to adapting to a client. And that's fundamentally what we do day in, day out, because you're one client who wants to build a stonking portfolio, a client who's just a first-time buyer, you'll get someone who just wants to do some protection or generally, that you have to adapt to each of those clients. And I think it's no different to working via chat, working on the phone, or working on Zoom. You just find your pattern, and it is going to take some testing.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's. I think we've given a good account of the process. I think what I'm sure people want to kind of hear the results now and kind of time it's taken. I know I think it's fair to say it's probably taken us about 3 to 4 months to hit that 10K mark, and I think there's probably been an element of luck in terms of, I won't say luck, but it's all about trying to find the winning audience and the right hook or offer to get people started. And I guess using your experience and using kind of making sure that we leverage the situation, I think the campaign has just really hit the ground running, hasn't it? When we started.
Yeah, it has, in fairness. I've picked up some big banks with some big portfolios, thankfully. Also been, again, just a really small example of the difference in routes to take. One client that I've picked up had actually been to another broker, had literally just messaged in, "This is what I want, can you beat it?"
Yeah.
I asked 2 questions off of the back of that instead of responding to his initial response. Got on the phone call to him, and he now potentially is going to be a really good client for me going forward. I've just done 1.2 million quid worth of borrowing. Nice. So it is a case of asking those questions, and not just going straight for the kill. I really do think that's a key point to it. Definitely been some growing pains that I've realised. COVID has made the general mortgage market that much slower, and I think that in itself is a challenge, because whereas usually your customer would be looking at a 6 to 8 week turnaround, you've now got new clients that you haven't seen face to face and are talking to you over the phone, that are now sitting there expecting a potentially 4 turnaround before they're getting their mortgage offer up, because of the way things have been with COVID and valuations and all those sorts of things. So the communication, I think, is a big key part of it, and making sure that you've got. I think one thing that I definitely found was that it was too much for me to do on my own, inclusive of everything that was going on with COVID. So I have grown the business in turn with it, and I think that does also tie in with adapting to the situation.
Yeah.
And tying into adapting with as it currently sits.
And I think one thing we haven't discussed really is the amount of referrals that you got from leads, even though they weren't really a solid lead or not, because of the value you'd given. I think that's been another byproduct of your approach to this as well.
Yeah, I think I've been very fortunate in as much as there's been the clients that I've spoken to that weren't ready to do business at that have referred me on to other clients. If I'm honest, I think for me the big thing that the leads had pushed to me was momentum. It gave me the opportunity to speaking to a lot more people, and if you're then speaking to a lot of people, your confidence does grow with that naturally, and you just pick out people's wants and needs that much more. I found you asking more questions around it, and what that has done is meant that they see a different side to you as an advisor.
Yeah.
And in turn, they then refer me on to us.
I know there's a fear around giving away too much advice, but I don't think you actually held back from the advice you gave, because I could see the comments and the messages, of course. But I think because you've done that, I think people have really valued that response, if you like, and they remember you, which is key, right? Because if you can't get them to do business straight away, can you leave a lasting impression? And I think sometimes people forget that we take what we know for granted a lot of the time. And I think sometimes people only want to give away the best stuff once they know they're going to get into bed with you, so to speak. But I think the way you approached it, just giving value all the time, irrespective of their background or what they needed, has meant that they've referred to someone else. And I think the numbers look good itself. I think from when I last checked, the cost per lead was coming in around, or the cost per message was around sort of £5, but the cost per lead was going around sort of £15-16, and we were getting sort of around, it was around a 20% conversion rate, I think, Tom, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah. From the, I think this is one key point, and it took me some tracking to do. Is again, it's those growing pains of making sure that you've got everything in hand. Having the numbers documented, I think, is key now looking back. And in total, across the whole period, it was 115 leads, and 62 of those we had telephone numbers or email addresses to then obviously further contact them. So yeah, it was just under the 20% across the board we've got.
Sorry, Tom, I can't hear you. I think it's just dropped out.
Have you got me back?
Yes, I have. There you go.
Yeah, across the campaign, yeah, we were looking about 20% that we got actual telephone numbers or email addresses where we could obviously further contact those clients. So yeah, it's a good return from my perspective. There's a lot of people that I feel I've got mileage with on the chat. I do think, again, it's those growing pains of being able to maintain those relationships when you haven't got a telephone number and email address. But I randomly get a message every now and again on Facebook from someone that I've spoken to 5 months ago. I think that's the learning curve to try and get them the telephone number or the email address so that you can move to a different route of chat. I think trying to keep it on Facebook, I want to get them off Facebook as early as you can and to a call. And it doesn't take as long as you think. I think for me, it was generally 5 or 6 messages. We were then generally getting is it easier to have a chat on the phone than chat here?
Yeah, exactly. I think going back to the testing process, we normally use Messenger to start the testing process, just because it's better. But because the engagement was so high, you were able to qualify them first time, weren't you, before asking for their name, email, and phone number. So rather than just being an automatic form fill and following up with them, they actually wanted you to call them and tell them more, didn't they? So although those numbers, we haven't got name, email, phone number for all the leads that you have got are genuine people who are interested, which is a massive difference as well, which is one of the reasons why we probably didn't switch on to lead generation straight away. We're really starting to explore that now, aren't we? So
yeah,
it just shows that if there's a genuine interest, people will want to engage. And in this example, landlords wanted more properties and wanted more money, really, which is what it comes down to. So I guess I just want to go. I know we've kind of gone through a lot during this session, but I just want to just do some reflection, just get your honest account of the process. What did you like? What didn't you like? I know you talked about the numbers, but just something to share to sort of the audience today.
For me, I think the thing that I've learned over the last 6 odd months, maybe, since we started. I think I think for me, it gave me momentum. It gave me that 2, 3, 4 leads a day, talking to someone about the business, gave me a focus. And I think the other part of it that probably, again, then made me adapt a little bit more, and it's still a bit of an ongoing battle, is the content. Because a lot of those leads I've now got to like and follow the page. So in turn, when I'm now popping out posts that they're actually, the reach is that little bit more. And I think as I adapt my process and do start looking to the video, I think in turn, the strength that will give me with further reach and seeing more people and hitting the right audience again, because then people are liking the page.
Yeah. And what didn't you like about the whole process, if anything? You can be honest.
Honest answer, I think for me, I think the difficulty that I found was more, I wasn't prepared at the time. I think we both said this. It got to a point where there was so much going in, trying to deal with COVID and applications during that, and trying to look after the clients. Wasn't fully prepared for the level of business, was probably the worst part that I found. But again, that just boils down to adapting and not being prepared for the success that we had with it, in fairness. I don't think either one of us were expecting that round.
It's a good problem to have, isn't it, I guess? And I think it's, but it just, I think we always, I think when we started, we looked at kind of what the typical results could be and what the highs and lows as well. And I think although we had one idea, we did brainstorm loads of other ideas, which are kind of retesting now around remortgages and even looking at different approaches as well. Okay, I mean, the other question I've got with regard to reflection, bearing in mind we were talking, I think, on and off for a good year before you jumped ahead. What would have changed your mind to start sooner? And what I'm trying to say is what could, I guess, me and the agency have done more to help reassure you or help take that leap, if you like, to take control of your marketing?
It's a good question. The honest answer is that I think I probably prior to that COVID lockdown, as you say, we'd been talking a good year, but I think I was always looking for that confirmation, reassurance that I wouldn't just be putting money down the toilet, for want of a better word, and having any real idea. And I think for me, if I just sat there and saw COVID and thought this could go really if I don't do something. And to a degree, it's an interesting one because I'm speaking to a lot of other brokers now, and I've never really reinvested back into the marketing side. And as I'm speaking to more, I'm having those discussions with regards to what are they doing to find more. And it's an interesting one because they don't. And fundamentally, we are a business. Coca-Cola are still spending however many hundreds of thousands on Christmas Coca-Cola adverts. They're probably one of the biggest brands in the world, and we need to remember that as brokers. And I think that's one big message that I've taken from it, that you've got to commit somebody to each month for marketing in whatever route that take. But I think you've got to look at your options. And as we said, we're trying different things, not just sticking with the one pot. We are going to try different things and different routes over the next 12 months so that we can then grow further. So that then when we do want to sit there and start putting bigger pots of cash to the marketing budget, we'll get that stronger return because we know where to spend. But yeah, like I say, for me, I think it was just, for me, if I'm honest, COVID was a big driver. It was probably that fear of not achieving. But when you're on the other side of it, it's that fear of not achieving because you've wasted money.
Yeah, I think it's. I speak to a lot of advisors on the fence, and I think it is, am I going to get anything back? And I think it's the thing which I've taken from what you said is taking action. I think that's the best thing you can do, and it isn't necessarily spending money with us. It's actually doing something to get yourself out there, which a lot of advisors not sure how to do or what. And I think that's just the nature of the industry as well. Okay.
Yeah, I also, if I could throw something in, the other part of this that I would sit there and throw in, I think it was, for me, it was a bit of a key driver as well, to make sure my cash flow, and it was just a change in the way that I work. In as much as I, quite early on, I've predominantly always charged my fees at offer stage. And soon after this and seeing the numbers that were coming in, I then switched my fees to at application.
Yeah. Which
then obviously gave me that cash flow. But I think you can always feel more confident then as long as you get that one a month from your advertising. If you throw that fee back into it, anything you get asked point is a bonus. And that's kind of how I'm looking at it.
And I think that's it. Even with everything we do, we always try and gear up for you to break even as a minimum as quickly as possible. And that typically in this niche only takes one sale, maybe two, depending on what it is. And it then just gives you a good foundation and sets you up for success, doesn't it, as well?
Yeah.
Cool. I guess finally, Tom, what's it been like working with L2W and the whole process? How's it been for you, given not a lot of advisors will have worked with an agency to grow sort of their business? How have you found it?
Yeah. Gotta say, I would sit there as we've probably become more friends than colleagues to a degree. In touch. I know that I can give you a shout or a text message or a Facebook message with ideas. I mean, I think it was last night. 9:10, I think I messaged you on something last night.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key thing. Yes, you're not going to want everyone messaging you at 9:10, but I think you're always open to what's out there, and I think you always give an honest opinion is what I have found of other options. You know that I'm always looking around at different things that we look at and trying to come up with new ideas. And I think from my perspective, sometimes you bringing me in a little bit has been a big key part to it. But also and say, does this work? Can this work? Has been a help as well. Because I don't think you've only just, in fairness, I don't think you've just about Facebook. We've had other discussions on different routes and different angles to work with, which is a key point. I do think my skill set is more in talking to people and not in marketing. I can come up with the ideas, but I don't necessarily know how to specifically do those things, which I think has been key.
I think with what we do, it's like our approach or ethos has got to be a win-win. So if you win, we win. It's as simple as that. And I think with that in mind, it also doesn't stop with the lead. We're always very keen to understand per lead what's the feedback been. Are they all good? Are they all bad? These are good. We can then pinpoint the adverts and then tweak and evolve it going forward. So I think you guys, as advisors, you know how to sell what you do. Otherwise, you won't be doing what you do. And I think really it's all about digitizing that approach or that style, whether it's targeting certain individuals or whether it's rapport building first. It's how do we get that online and really evolve. But no, Tom, listen, I want to thank you for your time today. It's hopefully this has been useful to the audience. And for those watching, I just want to say, if you want to kind of have a chat in terms of what a lead gen system would look like for you, please book a call now via the link below. And then, thanks again, Tom.
Superb. No worries. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.